Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Houston and I'm a visual artist working with questions related to climate change. I use drawing a lot in my own practice as I search out ideas and as I try to make our vital connection to our natural world visible. I'd like to welcome you to this week's edition of Drop in Drawing, where we'll be looking at Sid Carpenter's work entitled Deep Roots. It's a ceramic work and it uses natural forms as inspiration for this abstract sculpture, alluding to fertility, growth, and the interconnectedness of life. It references both human anatomy and the natural world. This work is currently on view at the Met in the exhibition Shapes from Out of Nowhere, Ceramics from the Robert A. Ellison Jr. collection. Before we get started drawing, I wanted to talk a little bit about the ceramic work titled Deep Roots, made of earthenware and measuring roughly 50 by 18 by 15 inches. This two-toned sculpture combines two different organic root-like shapes to create one long vertical form, weighing about 35 pounds. The top is comprised of four pointed shapes that resemble antlers of a reindeer or tree branches growing out of a central stem, roughly a quarter of the way down the form. The lower section, which comprises 3/4 of the length of the work, is made of three long helix-like forms made with clay coils. The top part is dark brown, while the wavy helix forms are an earthy, light burnt sienna, giving a pinkish hue. Sid Carpenter takes much inspiration from natural forms and from gardens. Speaking of gardens, she says, and I quote, "You think of a garden as a refuge of beauty and order, but there are real-life issues acting out. Rupture, discord, violence, all these things you wouldn't expect to take place in a garden. There's life." Sid's grandmother was a victory gardener during World War II who fed her entire family of 7 children from her garden. And her mother was also a gardener in Pittsburgh, the city where Sid was born. In her artistic research, Sid Carpenter studied African American farmers and gardeners. This led her to think about the importance of land and roots in American history. I wanted to read a quote from her as she speaks so eloquently about the importance of roots in her life and her work. She says, "I can't emphasize how much land, as an idea, as an experience, as content, has been important to my work on so many levels. One of the most profoundly disorienting, disruptive, and devastating events in the experience of any person or group is to be forcibly removed from the land you call your home. Having roots in that place is your sense of belonging. Without that place, you are adrift, vulnerable, and perpetually agitated, and at risk, a state all too familiar to America's indigenous peoples, African Americans, newly arrived immigrants, and the undocumented. For this reason, land ownership becomes paramount in sustaining those essentials to well-being, allowing for deeper roots extending over generations, and assuring a firm cultural footprint that in turn contributes to the broader narrative of humankind." She continues to say, "I would like my work to shed light on these ideas. Rather than making images of actual people, I'm making portraits of the places that are sustaining root-based origins of that sense of identity, that sense of ownership, and that sense of pride." Listening to Sid's words about her work gives so much insight into this ceramic piece titled Deep Roots that we're looking at today. Not only can we appreciate its lyrical beauty and elegance, but we can also think about the symbolic and real implications of being rooted or uprooted. Her works carry a sense of movement and light with a motivating gesture that takes cues from the natural world. I look forward to drawing this work together.
For today's drawing, we'll need at the minimum a pencil and an eraser. And if you want to, you can also use some conté pencils or conté crayons with white, burnt sienna, and a dark brown. Or you could use colored pencils, kind of a burnt sienna and dark brown also. It's really as you wish. Just plain pencil and eraser will also work just fine. So I'm going to start off actually just looking at the overall proportions, so I'm freed up from that consideration. And I'm going to make a sort of a little line at the top and the bottom of my page so I know more or less, that the image is going to rest within these two spaces. The reason I do that is because I don't know if it's happened to me, probably to you as well, where, you get started with something and the drawing looks really good and you've done this beautiful work, and then all of a sudden it's sort of not the right size and then you have to erase it. So I like to just take care of the measurement and the proportion from the beginning. So this is going to really roughly be the top part of my form, that antler sort of tree-like sort of shape I was describing earlier. And this lower section will be those 3 helix-like forms. I'm going to just get a sort of a general sense of that, where those things are going. And I also use a kind of a light mark before I get sort of too committed to it. And I'm going to giving myself a sort of a very gentle, just kind of an indication of the overall sort of shape of things without getting into the particulars. So like I mentioned, there's these 3, I usually draw so light at the beginning, so it might be hard for you to see how I'm getting started. But I'm going to erase that actually after, so that's why I don't want to commit too much with such a dark mark. So this gives me a sense of sort of where things are. And now, because I would like to capture a sense of fluidity and movement with my line quality, because Sid Carpenter was so interested in finding abstract forms that defy gravity and convey a sense of lightness and movement. So I'd like to express this similar spirit in my approach to the drawing. So here I am. I'm going to work with these kind of fluid, wavy lines. Kind of just moving there, kind of moving around here. And I know that they come down to that center point. And I can look at also, before we even go much further, I'm going to show a fun exercise that might help you with this actually. So I'm taking my other piece of paper and I'm going to do what I call dot to dot. So let's just pretend like here's a dot. Maybe I'll use a darker pencil for you, or something like this so it really shows up. Here's a dot, and here's a dot. Let's pretend I'm trying to make those fluid wavy lines. I'm going to try to move quickly and join and move from this dot to that dot. So here I go. Oh, good. I did it nicely. I got right to the edge. Sometimes you miss. Let me try it on the other side. Oh, see, didn't quite make it. But it's actually, it's a fun exercise, really, because it deals with the question of fluidity and speed and kind of trying to understand a precision while being fluid and quick, because this precision is important just to capture that, like I was just mentioning, the size of something. But the sense of speed and rhythm is a different kind of important aspect of the drawing, which conveys the sense of these natural forms that are actually so fluid. So, okay, so I did a little practice. You can do that. And then now I'm going back in here with my form and kind of try that same sort of thing here. Whoop. Okay, bring this over. Okay, that's nice. This one maybe needs a little, I can erase, use this eraser here. Okay. And then I can also actually start to think about these interior shapes that what you could call it negative shape, or airspace in the sculpture here. Okay, and here's another one over here. When we look at those negative spaces, they help us understand the other shapes as well. And there's this aspect too where it's kind of tucking behind, and that's important to show that it's sort of behind something. When we're dealing with flatland in the drawing world, it's always a trick to show that there's something in front and something behind. So that kind of tucking in the shape will help. The other thing is I just would like to capture this nice sense of the overall kind of gesture of the form, kind of looking at the bottom kind of lines up with the top, cross-referencing where is one shape compared to another. Here's these nice antler-like, kind of like a beautiful, almost like fingers or knuckles or something. Beautiful antler-like shapes. Okay, so that's a nice kind of overall kind of guideline for my form. And from here, I can start to think about, once I've got this established, I can start to think about the lights and the darks, and also the coloring of it. Like I was mentioning earlier, it has this very beautiful sort of two-toned pigmentation, using the clay bodies. So let's see now. Here we can bring in some of this kind of darker. I can use if I want to, the dark brown, kind of bring that in. Like, you guys can use your colored pencils, or just your regular pencil. If you just push a little harder, that's a nice way to get a darker mark. This has got a nice, interesting little foreshortened kind of antler thing here. We just sort of see it from the front, so we could miss that shape there. It's kind of in there, and here I'm just kind of getting that darker color in. And there's two things that are happening. One, which is that the object, because it's three-dimensional, it's capturing shadows. So there's areas that are even darker. And then there's the other consideration, which is just that it happens to be a dark brown. So kind of looking at those two aspects. And here, now moving into those, what we were calling those helix-like forms. It's this beautiful burnt sienna. I'm going to use this other burnt sienna color, kind of bring it in. I can use the side of my pencil also to get a sense of, there's a lot of nice texture in this work, and I can kind of try to capture that as well, moving this color throughout, and again pushing harder or lighter depending on if it's darker or lighter. Kind of moving this throughout. The pencils are nice to use, or if you have these other little contés like this, these are also can be nice. They're a little more smudgy, depending on what you have at home. Even at this point, I can make some adjustments. Like, I'm actually looking at this form and I'm noticing, this should actually be more curvy. So I'm going to take my eraser and just kind of work back into that. Make some adjustments. It's really nice to know that the drawing is always open and fluid, and open for adjustments as you're working. Then it becomes quite interesting, actually, as you're drawing, to be able to when we're looking and we spend time with it, we notice things that need to be changed that we don't see at the beginning. And it's really important to be able to have an open approach to it, so we don't feel like it's, once we get started, we can't make changes. It makes it a lot more fun when we know that we can change things. Okay, just kind of looking at these fluid forms. It's nice to think about how they were made with those coils of clay. I don't know if you've worked with clay before, but it's so nice to roll them with your fingers. And they have this kind of beautiful wavy mark that's coming from those coils. Okay, as I'm moving through the form too, I'm thinking about exactly that, like how it was made and how it would be if I were to touch it. And that can actually create different kinds of line quality. So, I might make some of my lines going around the form, some of them darker, some of them lighter. So different line quality and different line direction. Okay. Here we go here, thinking about that. Oh, and here I lost my shadow a little bit underneath here. This is this kind of dark area that's tucked under. So kind of get that darker again. Just like I was saying in the top, there's two things that are happening. One, which is just the coloring that's happening on the object, and then which is giving us this beautiful kind of pinkish color and this kind of burnt sienna color that's spread throughout. And then there's also just the way that it's catching shadow. So as I can see here on this edge, it's really in a shadow, or down here, this is in a shadow. And like I was saying earlier too, that's also what makes it look like it's behind. So at this point, especially in a section like this, I'm going to establish I'm bringing in white. And I'm going to bring that over so that I have like this kind of whiteness that's coming in front of, there's this one, oops, sorry. I'm going to use this conté crayon here, so that's an interesting way that we can think about creating depth. So one of it is by shadow, so that's the light and the dark. And then another is also just by the overlapping shape, the way that you draw the shape and how the one thing is over the other thing. So that's also important. So that's what we've got going on here. I'm going to show that to you closer up. Just this little moment of this one coil kind of in front of the other one. So when I get the darkness and we start to feel like that sets that behind. And then we have the, also the white is just nice just to actually get the color of this, the ceramic, because it really is kind of pink. And I think so using the conté crayon with the white gives a nice approximation of the color that we have there. Okay. Something along those lines, and integrate this over here. Okay. Bring some of this. I can see that maybe it would be nice to bring some of the conté crayon up into there's a little bit of it in this kind of, keep thinking of them as antlers, but anyway, this kind of root shape at the top. And there's a little shadow here. So now I can just, now that I've got my overall form established, I've brought in my lights, I can really start to look at, just overall where the darknesses are, where those shadows are. See a whole shadow along this edge. So I'm bringing that in with my dark brown. And down here, here's some lines here, curving down. It's nice to be able to make, as I was mentioning, let the lines kind of follow the form so they can give us an indication of that, the movement and the three-dimensionality of this beautiful fluid form. This looks like it needs to be brought out a little bit more. Okay. For those of you drawing along with me, I always wish that I could see what people are drawing. So I'd love to know that, in a way we're kind of drawing together, even though it's by proxy. But it's nice to think about that. People drawing in different places and being inspired by this work. Okay, I think this is getting pretty nice. That would be sort of how I would approach it overall. Maybe I might add a little bit more lights in just at the end. And one way that we can show our drawings though is if you're on social media, you can hashtag MetSketch, and then we all get to see them and see what you guys have done, which is really nice. I'm going to just erase those initial wiggly lines that I was experimenting with. Okay, so there's my drawing for today. That's how I would kind of approach that. I find that this, it's an interesting translation. You work from a sculpture and it gives an inspiration and it gets you started. And then from there, it turns into something else. So here now I feel like this drawing, having looked at this work and then now making the drawing gives me other ideas, which I think is exciting to be able to use the collection in that way as a place of research. And her work in particular, I find Sid Carpenter's work gives us so much insight into the question of rootedness and connection to land. And I don't know, I find that very inspirational actually. And it could, you might find for yourself moving forward that you would like to use other different objects. Maybe you might want to combine, I have this kind of branch here or this leaf, I might want to take two different natural objects, like maybe these two things together, and combine them into a drawing. So you could start in the same way. I think that her work gives us a lot of possibilities for other approaches to things. You know, this idea of kind of joining two different elements and kind of seeing what happens as a third entity when those two things are combined. So if I were to start this next one, I would approach it in the same way, just looking overall at the overall sort of proportion of things, and then experimenting with fluidity, rhythm, and speed, varying my line quality to capture the essence of what I'm drawing. So I hope that you share your drawings. I love to see them. I also hope that you get to see the exhibition Shapes Out of Nowhere and see Deep Roots in person. And again, if you're on social media, please share your drawings at #MetSketch so we can all see what you've done. Thanks so much for joining me today. See you next time.